Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by Las Vegas Motor Speedway, America's racing showplace.
It's because I don't have to answer to nobody. If you don't like it, what are you going to do? Ban me for something? What are you going to do? Fire me? You can't. You can't. So it's easier for me now to be me. I'm higher than hell because I'm sniffing gas the whole time. I was sick for like 2 or 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they snuck me in, and that was the very first time that I got to meet Dale Earnhardt. But you're Bobby Hamilton's kid. You know, he just ran Daytona. And I don't even know what I'm doing. I jumped up when he come off of 4, and I jumped up, and I was screaming, and Handyman jumped up, was trying to attack me because I guess he thought it scared him. Yeah. So I'm fighting this damn deer.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
Just start off with, Bobby, where in Nashville did you grow up?
Actually, right there in the Hermitage and Donaldson line.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, we started, went to Two Rivers, then McGavick.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I think the last couple years of school went to Mount Juliet.
Okay.
So I lived there in Donaldson, right? It was where the airport is, right across the bridge. You go down this first little neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay.
We lived there forever until my dad started running, I think it's the second or third year. Then we built a big place in Mount Juliet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how much time were you able to spend with him at the racetrack?
You've been there. You've seen the schedule. It was really hard to see him at all. Now, at the same time, I was still in school. So we would drive down after I got out of school Friday to go to the races. And then you would see him that night if we stayed in the motel room or if we stayed in the bus or whatever, you would see him that much. But a lot of times he was so busy with appearances and everything, you really didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with him.
Yeah.
And, I think you hear a lot of these with the kids and then the fathers that raced. You didn't get that family time that you would think that you would get. Yeah. And I don't hold it against nobody. It's just that's part of the job. Yeah. Being part of it, you understand now. That was one of the main reasons why the first opportunity I got to get out, I wanted out because I wanted to spend time with my kid.
Yeah.
And, home life and everything else. So it was, it was just one of those of hit and miss. And then during the week, he'd come home, and it was to get ready for the following week. Then in wintertime, you're testing. He's at the shop, which shop was in North Carolina. So, it was pretty busy year-round.
Now, how big a Bobby Hamilton fan were you?
I didn't know any difference.
Yeah.
Because I just knew the guy that stayed on to me about cleaning my room and being home on time. I didn't know the difference. Now, I would go to school and people would be like, dude, was that your dad on TV? And I'm like, yeah. And at the same time, it's the same dad that threw a wrench at me because I didn't clean up the shop like I was supposed to or whatever. So I didn't get it wasn't, he was my dad. Mm-hmm. But as I think 91, and he started being on TV, and he was running the Country Time car. Yeah, it was more of more people see, more people knew, and then it was kind of like so. But I never did look at him as far as any. I knew what he did, but also too when you go to the racetrack, all the other little kids, Jason Jarrett, Dale Jr., we were all racing bicycles in the infield while they're doing their deal, So you didn't get an opportunity to realize you're any difference. Now, we were in a compound area. We couldn't hang out with the normal fans or whatever, but it never did click. But at home, it was just, like I said, it was the same guy that stayed on to me about stuff that I was doing wrong.
Now, you said that Country Time, when he was in that car, early 90s or whatever, what year, how old would you have been then? About what grade?
I was seventh grade, I think.
Okay.
It was 91.
All right.
91 is when his rookie year was, I think it was.
So did you ever take Country Time swag or whatever, STP swag to school and trade or whatever?
No, back then it was weird because it was like the driver would get like a box. It'd be like a couple jackets, a couple shirts, a couple hats, And that's what they would give you. Then the crew members would get about the same thing.
Yeah.
So they didn't have what they have now as far as, or when I was there, they didn't have, because when I was racing, they would send you pallets of shirts, hats, and everything. So we didn't get the merch that, they got now. When I was there, I mean, it was like I said, we have so much stuff now, it's sitting in the storage.
Yeah.
It's never been open.
Oh, really?
But back when my dad was running, you get a box of this, you got a box of that, and we're going to be nice and send you 3 boxes of Country Time. Well, it's a bunch of kids running my house. That was gone in 3 minutes, because my mom was too busy making it for everybody. So I mean, they didn't have it. The sport has grew so much from '91 to when I was in there to when I got out to where it is now.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah. All right, so you hanging out in the infield with Jason Jarrett, Dale Jr., whoever. What kind of shenanigans did you get into?
They had us. It was like they have like a little lot where the motorhomes were, or where you could park your rental cars and stuff, and you really couldn't do a whole lot. And if you got lucky, they would sneak you in. Yeah. Once the races start, they were more worried about watching the race.
Yeah,
and they would sneak you in. I remember back in the old Busch Grand National days, back when he was running for Philip Murtasi, the 8 car.
Yeah,
they snuck me in. I went with my dad. I got to leave with my dad. I didn't go to school that Friday, so we all left with the team. We got to the racetrack, and it used to be dualies and long trailers. So they stuck me in the trailer under like a car cover, but underneath that car cover was all their damn gas. So it was like an hour and a half. It was like 3,000 degrees, South Boston, 3,000 degrees. And I get out. I'm higher than hell because I'm sniffing gas the whole time. I was sick for like 2 or 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they snuck me in, and that was the very first time that I got to meet Dale Earnhardt, because he was there running a Busch race. And my dad brought him to the dually. And it was...
Hey, Dale!
Yeah, didn't even recognize. I was like, "Who's that?" But at the time, Dale, he was. Oh my God, it's Dale Earnhardt, And so that was little memories like that is what makes the stuff, like, to me, the stuff that I did or whatever. I can tell you all the cool stuff that I got to do with my dad.
Yeah,
little situations like that.
How did you wind up with your first race car? Is a little Pinto?
It was a little Pinto. I played baseball all through.
Did you?
Yeah, I played baseball all through middle school, high school, travel ball, rec ball. I mean, that's what I did.
Yeah, yeah.
And
what position?
Third.
Okay.
Third and shortstop between the two.
Yeah.
And there was a guy named Darrell Brawley who used to race at the fairgrounds, and my dad built him a car. But we kept the car at our shop. So you would get done with ball practice, come back to the shop. They're all working on the car and stuff like that. So we would see all this stuff, and it got to the point where, and then a guy owed him money. And said, "I got this old race car." And my dad was thinking an old chassis of something that we could use, and it was a Pinto. And the guy brought it and dropped it off. And as soon as he did that, it was like, "Is that mine? What are we doing with that? What are we doing with that?" So then all of a sudden baseball took a hard stop.
Really?
Yeah, then it was like, he's like, "I tell you what, if you wanna run it, you gotta tear it down and go through everything," which it was an old dirt car. So it was just clogged up with stuff. So we had to just basically destroy this little car. And we got it ready and came this place right here is the very first time that I sat in one. I didn't know how to even take off in first. I didn't know. I ran over to Jackman 2 or 3 times. I mean, it was it was a time. But that's how we got started. That's what started me racing.
Now, obviously, you ran here at the Rim. Where else did you run in this area?
He was real big on getting me out really fast. Like, for instance, I ran here for 2 or 3 years. I ran Nashville for a handful of races, and he was real big about he was wanting me to learn to work on the cars, so he wanted me to start traveling. So he stuck me with a group of a guy named Andy Dunlap. He was the old guy. He was our guy that drove the dually, got us in motels and stuff. As soon as we got on the road, he didn't want me running late models forever because he just always thought, and now that I know they teach you bad habits because they run like this and with bush cars and cup cars, ARCA cars, you can't do that. Trucks, you can only do it for a minute. So
you can do it, but not for long.
Yeah. So he didn't want me to. He didn't want me to stick around and do that a lot. So he put us on the road, and his main thing was wanting me to feel different racetracks, get out and adjust my race car to different racetracks. We were racing 3 or 4 nights a week, and so.
And what age were you?
Ooh, I wasn't driving yet.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we were. Once I got to the point where I could drive, dude, it was every night. He was trying to find a place for us to race.
Wow.
Yeah, it was every night, just keeping me going, and it never sounds good, but like I didn't even finish school because I was failing. It wasn't because I was the grade. Well, don't get me wrong, I was failing because of the grades, but I was basically failing because I never was there.
Yeah.
We missed so many races. I mean, missed so many days at school that they were just failing me, because I was on the road or whatever. Yeah. Now, back then, you didn't go to jail if you didn't go. They were just like, hey, what's going on? He's like, well, he's racing and whatever. So they let me out.
Yeah.
So so it really got heavy then. When all I could do is get up in the morning, go down to the shop, work on my race car, and look where we could race and whatever. And my mom turned me loose with the money. She would give me this much. This is how much stuff should be. And she would give an envelope back full of just like numbers, making sure I had all the receipts and I had all this or whatever.
So you're talking about for groceries and stuff?
No, I'm talking. It was my job to make sure we had enough money to get their race.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Pay for tires, pay for motel, everything like that.
Wow.
And it was, I didn't even know how to write a check. And they gave me an envelope with 3 or 4 checks and about $3,000 worth of buying for that. I'm like, what am I doing?
Wow. Now, how old were you?
When I started getting, it was about heavy 15, 16 years old when they were.
And handing you $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah, but wow. And of course you're thinking, woohoo, $3,000 or $4,000. But when you got there and you paid the tire bill, then you paid to have the tires. Yeah. You paid for the gas, you paid for everybody's meals and stuff. They had it down to where you come back with a couple $100. Never mind what the purse was.
Yeah.
But the purse was different because it was like, okay, you've got to make this purse work because that's going to start you for the next week. That's going to buy your parts. That's going to buy whatever to get you back on the road. So it was like the first time I knocked the nose off and had to put a radiator in it, whatever, it came out of that purse. And then all of a sudden it's like, how come the money's different?
Yeah.
That's what you got to start with. So then all of a sudden, I mean, it was, and people don't know this about my dad, but it was diehard. It would be like, it's a 150 lap race. Well, how come everybody else has got 4 sets of tires and I got 2? That's all you can afford. And I'm thinking, well, one of those are soaked, so they're done in 30, 40 laps. What am I going to do? Don't wreck your race car. Wow. And they would send me on the road. And of course, it's the way it was. So I learned really quick, if I want to compete. And don't get me wrong, he was driving Winston Cup, and he's making all kind of money.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about that. Yes, I had the race cars, I had the equipment, but it was like you're gonna learn. The very first time I ever, Casey Shacklet, his dad, Buddy Shacklet, this is a funny story. They were trying to teach me how to go out and get sponsorship.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was already arranged or whatever, but he wanted me to go in there and talk to him, and I had this little thing for all my stats. It was up here, all my stats and all that type of stuff. I never talked to anybody about money. It was either my mom or my dad giving me money to go race. Here's my limit. Here's what I got to come back with. So we're talking whatever, and we're in there just kind of cutting up whatever. So it got that awkward silence as far as like, so you going to give me the money or not? And he's like, oh, for the sponsorship? He's like, hey, so we really hadn't talked about that. So I was like, well, you going to give it to me? Or, how we do this or whatever. Yeah. So, but when my dad walked out, and of course I had a check, or whatever. I think it was like $300 or $400, and that would pay for our way to get in up here for the whole year. And I was telling my dad, and he's like, what all did you say to him? You shake his hand firm and whatever? I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, so how'd you even bring up the money? I was like, I asked him, are you going to give me the money or what are we doing? So he was like, you said that to Buddy Shacklet? And I'm like, what do you want me to say? Yeah. So then it was like all the way home, because this was in Nashville. We lived in Mount Juliet. All the way home, it was, look, you can't, Yeah. So I can go back, and my daughter gets, when I start, I'm like, back in my day, when my dad would say, she's like, Because she knows, and that's why I told her, I was like, hey, 18th birthday, my dad had the guys from the shop up there moving my stuff out of my room. Like, what are we doing? He said, there's a guy who's going to pay you $96 a week to drive his late model in South Carolina. I know, but why are they packing up my stuff? You're moving to North Carolina. But the race team's in South Carolina, so you're going to have to drive. That's the cheapest place we could find. I get up there. I didn't know anything about nothing. I didn't know. I said, do I need to go get a job? He's going to pay you $96 a week. Well, how do I eat? Yeah. I got to pay bills and everything. I'm going to pay your rent up for 6 months. After that, it's all on you. You should have money coming in from the purse. By the way, he's going to give you 30% of the purse. I mean, just threw me out. And it wasn't. And don't get me wrong, he would call me every day.
Yeah.
He would make sure, like you need anything or whatever. And I would tell him stuff that I need. Yeah, you'll figure it out. I mean, it was, and a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think because he had all this, he just stuck us out on the road and done it. He didn't. And a lot of people, so I do get kind of irritated when people say, well, you had the doors open. Well, hold on for a second. The doors were there, but they was not open. They were far from open.
So how much pressure, if any, did you feel racing around here and being Bobby Hamilton's son? Did it help? Did it hurt? Or were you just another driver?
No, it was awful because people expected you to be here.
Okay.
I've never sat in a race car. I barely got to the point where I could climb off that hill in this Pinto and come on the racetrack without stalling it, let alone, but you're Bobby Hamilton's kid. He just ran Daytona. And I don't even know what I'm doing. I mean, there for the longest, I was putting wedge in and I was doing it wrong. I kept saying, there was something wrong with this race car. When you go in there and push the brakes, it does this. And come to find out, I had the brakes on backwards and everything. I mean, it was so many things, but it was so much pressure that I had to perform. Even still today, I still feel it because I still question myself of thinking, if he was still here, what would he say? Yeah. So it never, and I've said this before, people, even like with Dale Jr. or anything. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. His dad, 7-time champion, and Dale's never won a championship. Junior.
Yeah.
What do you? I mean, I got to win I can only imagine what that kid went through. You know what I'm saying? Because I know what I went through.
Yeah. My
dad won championships up here forever. I only won one. So it was always like, oh man, I missed so many opportunities to do this or that. So it was always pressure. Even still today is pressure because of what he accomplished. People was like, well, you didn't win no cup races. I didn't. When my dad won one Busch race, I won 5. But he won a championship NASCAR. I didn't. And even still today, I think of all and like, man, I should have buckled down more. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm here today. Here's where I'm at. Here's what I got.
All right, so you're talking about all the pressure on Dale Jr. and all that. When his team calls you to be on the Dale Jr. download, I expect you to be wearing a Scene Vault Podcast T-shirt, correct?
You give me one, I'll wear it.
You got a deal. 1996, your dad won his first cup race.
Right.
At Phoenix with Petty Enterprises. Where were you?
I was at home with my grandmother. We were watching. I still remember it today. We had a deer, a pet deer. Our pilot was fishing, and this deer fell in the water as a baby. He saved it. Told my dad, "Come get it. I don't want it." My dad always wanted one. So this thing was awful. It was spoiled. He would eat hot dogs and popcorn. That's all he would eat. So it was sitting in the living room.
What was the deer's name?
Started out as Mr. Sparkles because he had all the little dots. That was from my mom. But then he was down there running around the shop. Well, he literally hit his head coming in the shop flying. Well, I'm telling you, it about knocked him. I mean, he was silly. I thought, well, he's dead. I mean, because he was out. And I told my dad, I said, your deer's dead. And he's like, what'd y'all do to it? I'm like, we didn't do nothing to it. He hit his, literally, he's out. He came to, well, he never was right from there. Like, he would try to go attack dogs. He would try to go attack horses. He was crazy. So we started calling him Handyman. Like Handy Cows. I was like, that's what his name was. But he was in the living room floor because he was eating hot dogs. and it was 2 to go, and we were sitting there, and my grandmother was like, "He's going to win. He's going to win." I'm like, just, Terry Labonte was right. He was running second. I was like, nah, I've seen this before. I've seen it. I know what's going to happen, a caution or something. And I remember because I jumped up when he come off of 4, and I jumped up, and I was screaming, and Handyman jumped up, was trying to attack me because I guess he thought it scared him.
Yeah.
So I'm fighting this damn deer because he's trying to get, but everybody was ecstatic. And he's never seen us act like that. He was always a calm creature. He literally lived in the living room chilling. And my grandmother was jumping
Now, how
around.
big was this deer?
This dude, was he not? He was big. He was full. We gave him away.
And he's laying in the,
we had
with a rack and
with a
everything?
rack. This
Come on, man.
I swear on anything. My mom.
I gotta see pictures.
Hit her up. I guarantee you she's got them. My mom would get up in the morning time and fix us stuff to go to the shop or whatever, because the shop was down the street and there was one behind our house. Then she would get up and boil the hot dogs, a big stack of hot dogs and popcorn for this damn thing to eat all day long. And he would come to the back doors because we had a big living room and the back door is all windows and it opened up to a big old deck. He would come on up in there, come right in then, go right to the counter, reach up, grab a hot dog, go right back down, and just hang out. You would be watching TV in the bottom of the room. You think, you know how you feel like somebody's watching you and you're looking around and you're watching TV and you hear something and look, you just curled up in a circle, just over there, just cleaning himself, whatever. Big old rack and everything. We had to we spray painted pet on him because that way nobody would shoot him. And we told all the neighbors, hey, don't kill him if he's got like red or yellow on him or whatever, because that they kill him. We gave him to a park. There was a protective park because he got to the point where he was really aggressive. Yeah. If he didn't know, and I'm not kidding you. There was starting to get an issue because there was dogs missing. This thing was killing dogs with his home because he hated dogs. And after his injury of his head injury, he is like one of those veterans that just flip out when a gun goes off or whatever. I mean, this dude it was awful. So dogs were disappearing and stuff. We was like, we gotta get rid of him. So they carried him to a non-kill farm. It was like, it had like 2,000 acres. And they tagged him. And we went up there, it was like a year later after we dropped him off. And he was right with the group. They knew exactly where he was. But we had him since he was this big. And then he got to the point where, he was a full, well, like I said, we had to paint pet, don't kill, on him.
You really shouldn't have told me that deer's name was Mr. Sparkles.
That was my mom.
That's your nickname now.
No. That did not come from me. That did not.
Sparkles.
Because she wanted to name him. I was like, we didn't. And then when he got hurt, and at the time, you remember Saturday Night? I know it wasn't Saturday Night Live. It was I don't remember the TV show. What was it? The comedian. It was the Wayne brothers. Was it Saturday Night? No, it wasn't Saturday Night.
In Living Color.
In Living Color. That's it. And they did Handyman. That's where we got the name from because he wasn't right. He was like limping and everything else after he hit his head. So that's where we came up with the name. She got mad at us for calling him that. Yeah. Because at the shop, we cut him a big old thing, put him a chain on it, said Handyman and stuff. So it was a going thing. But she named him that because when he was a baby, he had all the little white dots. Yeah. She looks like little sparkles, and that's where it came from.
I don't know how we go back to talking about racing, but that's all right. You ran your first couple of Busch Series races for the Saddlers in 1998. Then you split time between them and the Hensleys and Dave Carroll's team in 99. What kind of learning curve did you have getting your feet wet in the Busch Series? Because you talked about the struggles in late model and the brakes being backwards and all that. What kind of adjustment did you have getting into the Busch Series?
Well, when you got past the ARCA Series, you got to the Busch Series, then you had really decent people helping you. I mean, it was qualified people, so they could catch a lot of mistakes that you were doing. But he did have me at the shop, so I was working at the shop like with everybody else. And as soon as you got to the track, you were I don't want to say you were a driver, but you were treated kind of like a driver because they had it. And they needed to have it. They didn't need somebody like me out there. I'm telling you, that ain't going to spring on to work. They just had it. So they gave me the job of just making sure your inside's comfortable, make sure the belts are right before you leave the shop. We got everything else. And that was the biggest thing that I learned going from the teams that had no money to the teams that had money. This is awful. But all the teams that didn't have the money, they was always trying to figure out the reasons why they ran bad. And it was always the easiest point. It was always, well, the crew chief's awful. I don't think he's the problem. Well, then it's you. You're not trying hard enough. Or you got a new girlfriend, and she's in your mind more than the race car. I mean, that was the biggest frustrating part, is they couldn't produce a decent program.
Yeah.
So then they're trying to fix everything, and they're blaming everybody under the sun. That was the hardest part to get used to. Then when I got to the Renzis, where it was like top-notch stuff, Ed Renzi was putting money into it. He had sponsors and everything. It was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that was the hardest part. Getting past the blame game from the very beginning of everybody was trying to, that's the reason why we're not, that's the reason why, oh yeah, that's the reason why. I'm like, well, how many times have we been in the wind tunnel? Well, we can't afford that. Well, who we get the motor from? There's a guy I went fishing with. He's starting to build motors in his garage, so he's going to give us, we're going to Atlanta and the Busch Series, and you're going to get Frankie that goes fishing with us to build us a motor.
Yeah.
And then you missed a race by 3/10. You're like, well, I mean, I don't think you ran wide open. I haven't lifted when I left pit road. Well, back then they didn't have all the data, so it was your word against theirs. So it was like, well, because I mean, you go to these meetings, you're thinking, well, you're never going to get past this, because everybody's trying to figure out why spend more money. Well, we don't have no more money. So I mean, that was the hardest adjustment. Getting past that to the point of where, what do you need? Well, we got that.
How difficult was it for you to handle those first couple of years when they were pretty rocky?
The good thing about it, I didn't know any difference.
Okay.
I come from a late model.
Yeah.
It was run by us. So when I got there, I thought, oh, wow. Now I know what Dale Earnhardt goes. I know what Richard Petty does. Then you get in the middle of it, and then you move on to something bigger and better, and you're thinking, oh, my God, how we even done that? So I really didn't know a difference. And when you get an opportunity, you're in a bigger shop, they got real employees, they got somebody who's talking the right stuff as far as showing you setups and stuff, you're a sponge you're learning from. That was, but up to that point, you didn't know any different. So it really wasn't, it was, in your mind, you're thinking an upgrade, but in that sport, you just stepped into a swamp full of full-grown alligators. And you're in a little bitty boat. You're in a little bitty inflatable boat, basically.
Yeah.
And you're just waiting for something to happen.